Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington REALTORS legal hotline lawyer, and this is another episode in our DBrief series, a series intended to support our designated broker community and industry leaders. And in this episode, I want to bring to your attention a postcard that some of your former clients may be receiving in their mailboxes. The postcard is relative to the lawsuit known as Burnett versus the National Association of Realtors. We've talked about this lawsuit a lot within our industry. This postcard is alerting some of your former clients that they may be eligible class members in the settlement of this lawsuit. It was a partial settlement by some of the defendants in the lawsuit. So a chunk of money was paid by these defendants to be dispersed among class members. And to be a class member, the person who receives this card has to claim eligibility. The criteria to claim eligibility are identified on the back of the postcard. There's three criteria. They have to have sold property within the relevant date range, listed on the MLS, and have paid a broker compensation as part of that sale. The relevant date range in which the sale had to have occurred was October 31, 2019 through February 1, 2024. If you or your broker is approached by a former client asking, what's this postcard all about? You need to be prepared with a response, and you may need to help your broker be prepared with a response. And I can't tell you what you should say, but I do want to give you some ideas to think about as you form your own response. First of all, this is not personal. If a seller, a former client of yours, claims eligibility in the class, they're not making any personal assault on you. It cannot result in any financial liability to you or your firm or your broker. There is no business reputation that is marred by a former client of yours claiming eligibility as a class member. So make sure that if a former client approaches you, you let them know that the decision of whether they claim eligibility in this class is entirely up to them. It does not impact you in the slightest. You cannot tell them whether they should or should not claim class eligibility. That is entirely up to them. But you might want to let them know that the decision, whatever decision they make, it will not impact you personally. Second, I want you to think about whether or not you want to have a conversation with your former client at this time about the value that you and your firm brought to the seller. When the seller approached you in the first place, they needed assistance in accomplishing their objective. Their objective was to sell property, and they couldn't do it without you. But as evidenced by the fact that they're standing there with a postcard in their hand, they accomplished the goal of selling their property. What value did you bring to them to assist them in selling that property? Be prepared, potentially, to discuss your value. And then third, think about whether or not you want to help the seller understand what you and your association, Washington REALTORS, have done recently to change the way real estate is sold in Washington, to change the way buyers deal with real estate brokers in Washington, buyers and sellers, really. On January 1st, Washington law was changed to empower buyers and sellers to negotiate with their brokers upfront before or immediately after the beginning of the delivery of real estate brokerage services, so that consumers have full transparency in Washington state as to what their brokers will be doing for them and what their brokers' services will cost. Washington state is unique in requiring the negotiation and entry into an agreement between a broker and their client upfront in the very beginning of the provision of real estate brokerage services. And that agreement ensures that both the buyer and the seller are now empowered in Washington state to negotiate the compensation that their broker will be paid, so that allegations like those that form the basis of this lawsuit will have no meaning in Washington state after January 1st. If you need to access some additional resources that may help you either understand this issue yourself or explain it to a former client, go to warealtor.org, the Washington REALTORS website. There's a link there for DBrief, you'll find some resources there. There's also a link for the consumer campaign. You will find resources there that you can share directly with consumers who have questions about the changes in Washington law and how those changes were based on an effort to bring greater transparency and power to consumers in the consumer-broker relationship. And of course, you'll find the legal hotline, and you're always welcome to ask me a question. Thank you for being a Washington REALTORS member.